Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Fungus Among Us. I'm Kelly.
And I am Paul. And on this week's episode of The Fungus Among Us, we're going to be digging into episode 7 of The Last of Us Season 1, Left Behind.
Yeah, I was really anticipating that Left Behind would integrate, just like in the game, the cannibal group that Ellie is escaping.
So you thought they'd be cutting back and forth?
I did. I thought there would be some similarities to it. It certainly feels more like a standalone episode, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, we really got to see Ellie and Riley and dive deeper into that relationship and who they are. So I had mixed feelings about it. I really loved it as its own thing, but I kind of was hoping that we would get into like this group that Ellie does escape in the game.
In the game, during the Left Behind part, it's not the cannibal. She's still running away from the mall, the guys in the mall, the raiders. So it's even like a different group that we're not even going to see in the show.
So they created this game after they finished the first Last of Us game to kind of like
Correct, yeah. It was a
picks up,
DLC expansion to fill in some spots in the story and go deeper into Ellie's character.
right, and it picks up the game Left Behind picks up where we leave off in the show where Ellie is dealing with an injured Joel.
Correct, yeah. So in the base game, Joel falls on the piece of rebar at University of Colorado and hurts himself, and then there's a time jump of a few months to the wintertime, and Ellie is hunting a rabbit, and then the story continues in stuff that we haven't seen in the show yet, and then in the Left Behind DLC, it jumps back to the moment after Joel was injured, and so it alternates between Ellie trying to get Joel to safety after he's had this horrible injury, and they wind up fleeing into a mall, and they're hunted through the mall. Well, Joel is unconscious. Ellie is hunted through the mall by the same raiders who were fighting them at the University of Colorado, and then it
Right.
cuts back and forth between that and flashbacks of her and Riley, and basically the flashbacks in that DLC are pretty similar to what we saw in this week's episode of the show.
Yeah, the flashbacks of Left Behind are definitely like what happens, like just it solely focuses on Ellie and Riley, and I really enjoyed that. I loved Storm Reed as Riley. They had such great chemistry on screen. I thought like again, perfection of casting.
Absolutely. I love Storm Reed, and I was having trouble picturing her as Riley because I only know her from like one thing, but I loved watching her in a different kind of role than what I'm used to seeing her in, playing this sort of more authoritative, militarized kind of character, where she really embodied that beautifully. And yeah, you're right. They had amazing chemistry.
She was almost a bit more like she was almost more hardcore than Riley in the game. So
Yeah.
that was fun to watch.
Well, yeah, and also there was this dynamic between them of like little bit of like big kid, younger kid, right? Because Ellie's like 14 and Riley's 2 years older than her, which is a lot when
She's
you're
about
in your teens,
17, yeah.
Yeah, well, 16, right? Because she's just about to turn 17, or she just
No,
did,
she
or
said
so
she was
yeah,
17.
right? Okay, yeah, so like
Because
3 years, right? So
we get a sense of Ellie in this world that she is going to be some sort of natural born leader if she, kind of gets her life in order. Whereas like Riley expresses in the show, she's given like sewage assignment. She's 17, going to be 18. So I think we should talk about Ellie in the Boston QZ a little bit. That was really cool to see. That was not in the game.
it was fun to get that little bit more world building. One thing that's been really interesting about the show overall is just being able to see what the day-to-day lives of these people are like in this world. So seeing what it's like to be a kid growing up in a Fedra military boot camp / school in this QZ was it was a cool window into that life. At least kids still get to have Walkmans and listen to Pearl Jam in that future.
Yeah, exactly. I really enjoyed the scene of Captain Kwan and Ellie having a sit down after there's a tussle with
And
a school bully.
yeah, that was cool. I really like, anytime that The Last of Us blurs the moral boundaries of its universe and makes us think about things from different angles is really interesting. And the Captain Kwong scene, because he seemed like a cool guy, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, it kinda does make you question, okay, well, whose side really is better? I mean, we just saw in a prior episode where, there was revolution where people took over the QZ in Kansas. They were just as violent as Fedra. So it's like this balance of who
Yeah.
is evil here.
Yeah, they were just as violent as Fedra, and then they installed a leader who was so obsessed with vengeance that she got everybody eaten by infected, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was wild. I'm gonna have to go back and watch all that again.
Yeah,
Probably
me, I'm
my
gonna have to go
most
back and watch
favorite
that a
thing.
thousand more times. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, and so now we meet this Captain Kwan character. He's reasonable. He's making a pretty compelling case that Fedra is the only thing standing between humanity and absolute chaos. Because sure enough, I mean, pretty much the Boston QZ. Well, I guess Tommy's place is pretty chill. So there's other options. It's either
Yeah, I mean, there are other communities outside of the Fireflies and,
yeah,
uh, Fedra, but it was just, again, an interesting case that Captain Kwan was pitching that, like, "Look, we can have a decent life, you just gotta follow the rules." But I mean, like,
right.
so
And the
who's to
dude was
say?
chill. Like he didn't
Yes.
actually he didn't actually bust Ellie at all. He's like,
He
look,
gave her
I'm
her
not gonna.
Walkman back.
Right, yeah. He's like, "Look, I've tried throwing you in the hole and that doesn't work. So instead, I'm just gonna level with you." And she's like, "Are you gonna like do anything else?" And he's like, "Nah. Have a good day."
Yeah. I really loved that we get kind of that similar introduction to Riley sneaking into her room, and one thing that I thought was cool, um, was when it just occurred to me. So one thing I thought that was cool that I kind of felt like there was, like, a gameplay experience is when they're running across the rooftops. It felt like I was, like, playing a game.
Yeah, it was like a side scroller.
Yeah, something to that effect,
Yeah, it looked
which
like a
was,
Mario Brothers level. Like,
yeah, I was like, "Do, do, 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 do." Like, I was like, "Alright, let's go." It was fun.
yeah,
That was actually fun to
yeah,
watch.
yeah. I
Um
would. They should have put a level like that in the game, actually. Like,
I really also appreciated that once they got to the mall, the world building of this mall was so fantastic. It's a set that I really wish I could have visited. I thought it was incredible world building.
yeah, it was. It was a beautiful set. I just from the moment I like that the shot where they're crawling down through the hole in the ceiling and there's like the vines all over everything and just the wreckage really stuck with me. I mean, that kind of imprinted itself on my brain. It's a really beautiful sort of realization of the aesthetic of the world, and then that's
Yeah.
just the whole mall is like that when you're in there. There was the one. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but one part of the set design that I thought was fascinating was the super derpy horse on the merry-go-round.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you folks listening? If you watch that scene, like early in the part of the merry-go-round scene, there's one horse that has like a really crazy face.
Yeah, you sent me a photo of it, and I was in hysterics. We'll have to, like,
Maybe we
post it
should
on
put that on the
Instagram.
feed so yeah, people can see what we're talking about. Like, that derpy horse was out of control. I don't know, like, I feel like some set dresser was making a joke and sneaking it in there or something.
You really get the sense, though, that Riley and Ellie know each other very well. I thought, when they're going down the escalator, Ellie's being all cutesy, and she's just fascinated by all these new things. Just like we've discussed earlier on in our show, it's so fun to watch Ellie, like, experience what we would find, like, day-to-day things, like buckling our seatbelt or, like, going down the escalator. I mean, she got so funny on those stairs where I felt like she was, like, also trying to impress Riley. So there's a bit of a crush going on there.
For sure, and, it seems like, maybe we're learning too that Ellie is accustomed to, being the silly one in a relationship with a more taciturn, survival minded companion. Because we see that same dynamic with Joel too, where she's constantly
Yeah.
sort of tactically silly to draw him out, you know? And it seems like
Yeah.
she used the same thing on Riley. That's kind of like one of her ways of dealing with this dark world is, you know, showing people the goofiness of life.
Yeah. Again, which makes me think of myself. Yeah, we've talked about how I get so silly when things are dark.
That's true, you
Um,
do.
yeah, I mean, I'm forever gonna have dreams about this mall. It kinda, makes you think about what the world could turn into if there were an apocalypse. Or, the fact that climate change is gonna change our world.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the music in this episode. I just feel like the show and the creators do such a good job of like finding music and the meaning behind the music. When Riley and Ellie are on that carousel and they're like drinking and they're like, you can see Ellie look at Riley with such admiration. I don't know, my heart swells. Like she was fixing her hair too before they got on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's crushing. This is so sweet.
It went both ways too. Those little moments you're talking about, because like Riley had a bunch of them too. You know, like that.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
maybe my favorite thing about this episode, just as a depiction of two people who are like trying to figure out their love for each other. You know, like all these little moments with both characters where they have these little private moments with the camera where you just all of a sudden see like 100% of their feelings about each other. That was so beautifully done. I mean, you don't see that well done in most love story movie and TV shows. It was so good.
Yeah, I agree. And so that music sounded on the carousel, that music sounded really familiar to me, and it was like a lullaby version of Just Like Heaven by The Cure.
I was
And
wondering
I
about
felt
that when I
like
was watching it. I was like, is this Carousel have The Cure as its music?
Yeah. And I just continued to be really impressed with how they find music that I just really feel like fits what's happening between the characters. And I mean, if you really think about it, it's truly as poetic as Riley puts it that they're going to lose their minds together. And yet it's only Riley that will perish, leaving Ellie alone.
It was really cool. It's a beautiful song and it's a good song for that moment. I have to say it actually pulled me out of it a little bit because I was like because they made the Cure song a diegetic source. It was like playing on the carousel in that world. So it did kind of cause
Mhm.
me to like think about like what kind of company makes a carousel that plays the Cure? But
I don't know. I thought it was like eerie and beautiful. It gave like a foreboding feel to like what's to come.
yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, because like the lyrics of that song, a lot of people don't really talk about this, but the lyrics of that song wind up in kind of a dark place. And I've always kind of wondered about it. It's really interesting.
yeah.
You know, one thing that I was really hoping for in this episode, but I've kind of accepted by now that the show is going pretty light on the infected presence. But of course, in the game, they confront a gigantic horde of infected in the mall, and I was kind of hoping we'd get a little bit more of that type of action. Instead, it's just the one guy, the one clicker.
So, okay, so they're going through the four wonders of the mall, but I guess it ends up being the fifth one. Something I felt that was so well done is okay, Ellie discovers that Riley has been living in this mall and preparing these like bombs.
Yeah, she's making bombs for the Fireflies.
Yeah, and so
Which,
she reveals that she's being recruited to go to a different city and asks Ellie to go with her. You can see that Ellie is like clearly disturbed at the choices Riley has made. And so she returns to the very cool last wonder of them all, which is the Halloween store. And I was like so excited to see that they put on the silly masks where just like in the game, Riley puts on the clown mask and Ellie puts on like this wolf mask and they're dancing around to I Got You, Babe. And they finally kiss and it's magical and it's disrupted by that clicker. One thing that took me out of it a little bit here is like with all of the commotion that Riley has been creating with noise in the mall. how did this clicker not already hear Riley? I was like,
Totally. Riley has run enough power to that video game room to play Mortal Kombat 2 for long enough that she discovered fatalities for multiple characters. Now, unless she had some kind
yeah.
of a guide, that means that she sunk hours into that game because those fatalities, I mean, they were like closely guarded secrets back when that game came out. Like everybody was wondering how to do the fatalities.
I mean, and of course we're nitpicking here, but it was kind of like, I mean, but to be fair, I was a little bit like, come on, this one clicker.
Yeah, this one clicker who has already slept through like days of her powering up the mall and doing like crazy stuff in there.
I was gonna say we haven't really seen like a clicker bite somebody. Because I'm thinking of earlier in the show when Tess got bit, or even when Ellie got bit again with Joel in the museum. I was like,
He
okay,
never
Riley and Ellie were bit here, but you don't see it.
It's a stylistic move that is now been established that like it's pretty much the show's only move when people get bit by infected. Like anytime any character is bitten by an infected, we don't see the bite happen on camera. The character reveals it after the scene is over, which, you know, I think Tess was like in a different room or whatever. No, she was there. But yeah, like so it started with Tess and then with Sam and Tess and Riley. I'm sorry. Blah, 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 wait, I'm starting to like it started with Tess and Ellie both in episode 2, and then
Yeah,
with Sam when he got bit, and now with Riley. And the Riley one I guess felt weird to me because that fight with the clicker that they had, it was a pretty cool fight, and it was very
it was.
specifically choreographed
Yeah.
and shot in a way that I was like, wait, I feel like I should have seen that happen. Like I saw every frame of that fight, and I did not see that clicker bite her. So it's like this trick of having the character reveal the bite when the fight is over, and Ellie because they both got bit. Like it's starting to wear a little thin for me because I'm like, okay, wait, come on, like that clicker did not bite them. I saw the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, though, it's like supposed to be a reveal, of course, to us as an audience and to them, because their adrenaline is so high. I mean, because you could see Ellie at the end of that fight go, ha ha ha, fuck, like she couldn't believe that she fought and killed a clicker.
Yeah.
So when your adrenaline is that high, you're not going to notice an injury. So like, I will say though, when they revealed their bites to each other, I was like, "Oh, man." I was just as heartbroken as I was in the game. Like, even in the game, I knew it was coming, that Riley wasn't gonna survive. We have Joel and Ellie in the beginning in that basement, and it's like Joel saying, go back, find Tommy," and Ellie runs up the stairs and is, like, holding onto the door as if she's really going to leave Joel. I or she's, like, debating the choice to leave Joel. I didn't buy that. I felt like Ellie wouldn't even consider it, or it was like an intention to segue us into her past with Riley.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It didn't like, yeah, it seemed like the whole point of this episode as written was that because it was bookended by this thing of like Joel's telling Ellie to leave, and then it ends on this moment of like, is she going to leave Joel? With her reaching for the doorknob like she's leaving. And then when it comes back, and then it takes like, 50 minutes to tell us the story of Ellie and Riley, and then it comes back showing like, no, she didn't leave. And I was like, I don't know that the present day bookending, I was like, I nobody thought she was going to leave, like, and so if the point of this backstory was to show us this detail about Ellie, that she's fiercely loyal and won't abandon people, it's like, yeah, we kind of got that already from the previous episodes. We knew that about her. So as a bookending thing, it felt a little clumsy to me, and that's what kind of gets to the big question. Like, I don't know about you, I think I would have preferred a little bit less in the past and more intercutting with the present in some form.
More intercutting with the present, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some form, I agree with that. It's tough because I really enjoyed Riley and Ellie together so much in this kind of like standalone feel episode. But yeah, no, so we come back to Ellie frantically looking for something to help Joel. But I think the intention too is to kind of give that like comparison. Like, of course, Ellie and Riley were going to stick it out with each other until the end. Like, Ellie wasn't going to leave Riley and Riley wasn't going to leave Ellie. So that came across really well. So I think they were trying to transfer that into the present moment between Ellie and Joel. With that being said, since it was indicated early on in the show that like Ellie had killed someone before, I really thought they were going to show something, some kind of moment where Ellie had to make the choice to kill Riley because clearly Ellie is immune and Riley wasn't. She died. They didn't do it in the game, but for some reason I was really anticipating they were going to show that moment where like Ellie had to make that decision.
It would have been really hard to watch, but I was looking forward to it too. And I felt like, well, also there was that line in an earlier episode establishing where Ellie tells Tess that she's killed somebody before. And in that
I
episode of
thought
the
she told
podcast, we were like,
Joel.
ooh,
No, remember it was
was it
Joel. They
Joel?
were in that like
Yeah, no, you're right. It was Joel. Whatever. Anyway, like, yeah, but at the time, I think we were speculating, like, oh, is she talking about Riley? And so
yeah,
it kind of
yeah. And I was like, I
invites
know
you
who you're
to
talking about.
imagine that there's going to be a scene about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't that be crazy if they revealed that Ellie actually went back to the Fedra school and killed her bully, and that's who she was talking about?
That's so crazy. Yeah, we didn't get that in this show or the game. So, I mean, I really, really loved this episode. I am curious to see how they are going to play out the rest of the season because I continue to still crave, and I'll say it every episode, more Joel and Ellie like scenes together, like maybe navigating through a forest or like, you know, something
Or
more
maybe, like getting chased by infected and having to get away from them or fight them. That would be a cool
I
thing to
know
see
we're
in the
both
show.
like yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. As much as I've been loving everything that I've been seeing, I'm also getting a little nervous because I'm like, well, shit, there's only 2 episodes left, and I feel like there's
That's
more than two
wild.
episodes worth of stuff that I still want to see in this part of the story.
Yeah.
So I
They
don't know.
do a great job
We'll
though
see.
of like diving into these other worlds and other characters, but we'll see where it
They
goes
do.
with the
Yeah.
next episode. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be, I mean, we're getting into the meat of the final movements of this season. So it's going to be an exciting couple of episodes here coming up. But I will say that they're hitting more of the right notes than I ever would have dared hope for in a Last of
Yeah,
Us adaptation.
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's also due to wonderful performances and great casting and yeah.
And and writing. I mean, we should also shout out like one interesting thing to observe about the Left Behind episode. This one was written by Neil Druckmann, the
Yeah.
creator of the game. So all the other ones that I think, I mean, I haven't like researched this, but I feel like all the other writing credits have been Craig Mazin, been doing the bulk of the writing. But it seems like Neil Druckmann took on the writing of the Left Behind flashback episode, which is really
Oh, is that
interesting. So
so?
that's
Is
also,
that why there was like
yeah.
a
So
10-minute video game scene? No.
yeah,
I'm kidding. I
that well, that no,
loved it,
no,
FYI, but that's funny if that's true.
yeah, no, the answer is totally yes. I mean, because Neil Druckmann's a video game guy who obviously enjoyed Mortal Kombat too. I mean, in the game is called The Turning, the video game. It's a fictional video game, but it's still obviously inspired by Mortal Kombat, and they talk about fatalities and stuff. So yeah, and also that's why this song has a Pearl Jam episode in it because Neil Druckmann's a huge Pearl Jam fan, and a Pearl Jam song plays a very significant role in Last of Us too. So yeah, you can see his vibe all over this episode.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it earlier in our show how that's gonna go down, Pearl Jam in
Yeah,
season 2
yeah,
of
they're going to be a
HBO.
post right. They'll be a post-apocalyptic band of troubadours.
I mean, what an iconic song, Future Days. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there, just go listen to Future Days and start vibing with that song.
yeah. There is always so much to say, so much appreciation and love for this show, so many things too that like we wish we could have seen, but again, that's my theory is because we're so attached to these characters, especially Joel and Ellie. Um, it's hard to kind of put together and fully grasp that there's just 2 episodes left.
Grasp it we must because the clock is ticking and the hour is at hand.
I'm very excited to see what happens. Left Behind, the HBO episode was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. Very curious to see what happens next. I am looking forward to Troy Baker and whatever role he's
Ooh,
going to
yeah, I
play.
wonder Yeah, I can't wait to see how he shows up. And also, by the way, Ashley Johnson, we still haven't seen her, even though we kind of know who she's going to be. But like, I keep expecting that she's going to be in the next episode, and then she never is. So
Yeah, same.
hopefully we'll get her soon too.
Thank you, everyone, as always, for listening to The Fungus Among Us.
That's right. We really appreciate all the support, and we will see you next time to dig into the penultimate episode of HBO's The Last of Us.